Great. Great. Well, hi, Ina, again. And thanks so much for joining me today for this interview on digital musicianship. So I know you as a flautist, contemporary music performer, and but could you still tell us a little bit more about your musical background and what context do you currently work in with digital media as a musician and researcher too?
Yeah, so I have my background in classical flute playing first. So I just did my conservatoire as everyone else, going through the whole repertoire. And then pretty soon I specialized in contemporary music. I went to UC San Diego to focus on a doctorate there. Pretty much only playing complexity music while I was there. So the music by Brian Ferneyhough. Then I came back to Europe, was still playing Ferneyhough, and invested in how to make complex writing more accessible for younger generations and students now, so that they won't refuse to play contemporary music. And then the lockdowns came, and then everything was different. And I made a shift pretty early on towards new means of expressing new pieces, actually. So I was working with some composers remotely, and we were looking for new ways to premiere the collaborations that we were investing in. Totally tired of Facebook Live and the Zoom orchestras and the YouTube Lives. And pretty soon, I started collaborating with visual artists and actually writing grants for research projects that deal with remote performances. And out of one project came another and another and another. And now I'm actually only playing virtual digital performances using new media formats that goes to, most of them are really virtual, so with avatars in virtual environments made in game engines. But we also experiment with motion capture, with creative AI, with VR trackers, with hybrid formats. So it is pretty much focused on, I would like using that word, the metaverse. It was cool before Meta stole it. And we still don't have another word for it, but it's really this Web3 development that is really exciting for artists. And it's opening up new formats for interdisciplinary collaborations, actually. So within our collective, we call it e-arts or XR performances, XR art.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. So XR refers to anything like extended into the virtual.
Yeah, extended reality. So it's a combination of augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, but also immersive technology like projection mapping, motion capturing. For example, so software like Cables, where it's really interactive and interacting with new media and technology. So actually everything that adds to the normal physical way of playing.
Mm. Great. And how do you find this new extension of yourself as an XR performer? How did this complement your other musical skills and the things you were used to do with like contemporary flute playing and things like that?
Yeah, actually, it is way more natural for me personally as a performer than I would have thought a couple of years ago. Since my normal way of playing was always very physical, very embodied. I think that's why I was drawn to Ferneyhough's music as well, since it requires such a physical engagement, so much effort, which was actually pretty natural for me as a player. So while still playing classical music or going through education, especially here in Europe, I was always too active or moving too much or giving too much of myself. And that was not the case with Vernia, so that felt really natural. And after that, I explored the monodramas a bit, with especially The Silence by Jason Eckert, with really a choreography, like sitting on the ground, rolling on the ground, giving effort to getting up. So that was like this, for me, natural extension, an extra parameter, what was necessary for me to express myself while playing. And this now is another extension of that. So for example, playing in mocap suit, when the director is guiding me, he never looks at me as a physical person, but always as an avatar in the virtual world. So all the movements are totally exaggerated, not aligned with musical parameters anymore, but it triggers the inverse way that you really adapt your musical expression towards the movements that you do as an avatar than in a virtual setting. Same with artificial intelligence. It is an exaggeration and especially awareness of what muscles that you use, which fingers that you're using, how one finger triggers another muscle in your body to go with it, how a certain attitude can help for certain techniques to come out or prevent them to come out. So the extra embodiment, the extra body and physical parameter is making me more aware of my natural playing and enhancing actually that natural playing that I always had.
Great. So, so do you find that XR VR environments really make you feel like you're embodying that space, or you're embodying your own playing?
It is a bit that the what I really like about VR performances, and now we're experimenting with VR live performances, is that your audience is not passive anymore. In traditional Western settings, you as a performer, you are on stage, your audience is in front of you, has to sit down, shut up, and applaud when it's over, which is very unnatural. In other cultures, there is way more interaction between performers and the audience. And with audience, it's not only from theater or performative arts, also with visual arts, going to museums, there is no interaction. And in VR environments, you as an avatar, you interact with the other avatars around you. Sometimes I wonder now with the research that we're doing, sometimes they come very close and it's invasive. There is much more interaction that you feel actually the connection that they're with the story or not with the story, much more than when you're really opposing them from a stage. And it is also feeling part of that environment, which is different than a artificial stage. Actually, in these virtual environments, when playing in mocap, you also trigger the environment. Your audience is also triggering the environment. Are they moving a lot? Are they sending you emoji? Are they interacting with each other? Do they feel part of a community? And these are actually new ways of exploring how to offer art experience that I don't find on a classical stage anymore.
Yeah, that's great. It's really transcending like the conventions, well, the conventions of the ritual of the music performance, which, as you said, you only came into really during the pandemic,
Yeah.
right? You were something kind of still new, perhaps for you, but still something
Yeah.
very that you feel really strongly about.
Yeah, it's strange how fast it all grew. I think it was just it's like people who come out of a cage suddenly and see the sunlight, and I think it was a bit the same. So it was my inner tech nerd that was maybe always there that came out during the pandemic. But more so, I think the exciting opportunities that lie in working with technology and going towards the virtual, because it's unexplored still. I mean, it's the beginning of what
Mm.
will be possible, and this aspect of I can explore novelty and I can explore something new, I find really attractive actually.
That's amazing. Yeah, I feel the same. Is there anything currently that inspires your work? Any, theories, books, other artists whose work in VR you admire?
Yeah, there is Martina Menegon. She's a visual artist from Vienna,
Mhm.
teaching also there at the university. And a lot of her work has to do with glitch art, where she really places her own body in the center of her artwork. But for example, taking a lot of 3D selfies, but that is really awkward. So with your phone or with a LiDAR scanner, and you go around yourself, so you miss some spots. But it's very powerful because she is then really determining how to look at her body and how she wants her body to be perceived and to be looked at. And she takes that into augmented reality and virtual reality. And she introduced me to the glitch art theory, which I find very interesting. And then there is also a colleague, Frederik de Blazer. Together with Lieven Menschaert, they developed Figment, and it's an artistic AI software really focusing on small AI. So the bias lies with the artist. We determine what our input is. For us now, it's multiphonic fingerings.
Mhm.
Whatever you put into it, that is what the AI will learn. So it's not this massive AI that scans over the internet,
Mm.
but it's using the software which is really neutral. It's only what you put into it, which makes it not neutral anymore. But it's
Mm.
placing this software in the center of art experience again. It really triggers me to think about performative arts, because now my improvisation will be in collaboration with an AI, or directed with an AI, or influenced by an AI. And that is counterintuitive to what we are used to as performers, and especially what is being taught in higher arts education. And
Mm.
the fact that you can really put questions to the whole tradition of performative arts, and having these hierarchy of composer, performer on the stage, and there's the audience, and I guide you linearly from A to B. These things are now being questioned because of these things. And so individuals are really, for me, opening up new possibilities, and especially questions about our performative arts that are really elitist.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, this was going to be kind of leading nicely to my next question about the kinds of skills you engage as a musician when you work with these, VR extended environments, and what tools do you use for this work?
Yeah, the most important part is teamwork.
Mm.
So we are always a multidisciplinary team of ICT profiles or more technical profiles, digital artists. Um, I learned a bit of coding
Mhm.
myself by now, very slowly. But the most important thing is actually to be aware of the different software, the different hardware. How does it communicate with each other? And it's good to be aware of that as an artist, so that you can really communicate with your partners, with the more technical partners as well, who maybe don't come from the same artistic background or viewpoint. And we have seen that sometimes there is just a lack of communication, and then it doesn't lead to anything. But when you really communicate and then understand each other's world, then one and one is really three. And then as a performer, it is really letting go of any physical boundaries, literally. It's using your body way more. It's not about that instrument anymore, because you really need VR trackers already to also put your instrument in VR. It's all the rest of your body, of you as a performer, that is transported into VR. So all other parameters that are non-musical technical are actually very important in shaping those creations. It's movement, it's expression, it's using voice. It is using, yeah, extra effects, really going into electronics, adapting your musical language to a visual language. Does it communicate with each other? Is it aligned? Is it confusing when you see something and you hear something else, or is it really on the same level? And I find that quite liberating and but also difficult. Um, to then transport to classical education. Like I quit the conservatoire because it didn't match anymore at all. I can't find myself in our musical education anymore whatsoever. So it also makes it difficult sometimes to perceive myself still as a musician. I'm going away from that more and more. It's like, yeah, it's a coincidence that I play music, but it's not as a musician. It's just this one small part for a totally different artwork now.
Mm. Yeah, that's kind of, so do you find that conservatoires are really not finding their way towards this more kind of technologically adapted music world, or that they're just basically not even curious about
Mhm.
how it could extend their programs and so on?
Yeah, I'm sure it depends from place to place, but in general, that is the perception that I have, that it's very difficult to start. Well, it's not even starting a transition to implement what is going on in performative arts education at conservatoires. There's still this high focus on technique. Even in mission statements, you still see this division between creativity and technical skills. And as long as that is still the case, how can you build up on that? Um, I often said that I work at a conservatoire and not an innovatoire,
Mhm.
and I think that was really true.
Mm.
There is also fear. Talking to musicians a lot, there is this fear of, oh, are you gonna replace us by computers? No, of course not. So there is really this fear
Mm.
to explore. There is not enough room, I think, in education for personal growth. And it doesn't have to be with technology, but it's in all fields. It also has to do with world music, with exploring interdisciplinary formats, hybrid formats. Even electronic departments are not really established in every conservatoire. So I think there is just a lot other work to do first at conservatories before we can start talking about implementing more innovative formats.
Mm. But you are still working at the conservatoire, right, in Liège, or
In
is it?
Liège, I'm still working there. It's a different conservatoire. It's small, but it's also it there the tradition is Henri Pousseur, and he
Mm.
was in the Fluxus movement,
Oh,
and
right,
I
yeah.
feel that that
Yeah.
spirit is still there. So they're used to something. And so experiment is at the core of that conservatoire. So that's different. They have an improvisation program now, a master's in improvisation with different modules.
Mm.
And also improvisation with AI is now being discussed to really offer that to students. So
Wow.
yeah, that's a different conservatoire.
That sounds great. So I guess if, because they follow this tradition of more openness,
Yeah,
and yeah, that
yeah.
makes sense. Great. And to what you were saying about the kind of tools that you're using now as a musician, do you find, and I think you already touched upon this, do you find it's changing like your kind of identity of yourself as a musician through the kinds of music you're making?
Yeah, yeah. Although the music didn't change, the way the music is placed in those projects has changed. So it's not a central role anymore. It is, maybe you can even say that it's making the shift from absolute music to program music in a way. Because
Okay.
it's, yeah, because it's serving this Gesamtkunstwerk more
Mhm.
than that it's the pieces on itself.
Mhm.
Um, we're gonna place the Fernie house in VR now, and I'm actually really excited about that. That I can,
Wow.
yeah, I can still, because I still have a lot of love for those pieces.
Mhm.
But the format, just me on a stage doing the whole cycle feels really weird. But it's then serving an artistic concept, also more Fernie House concepts actually, by placing them in a conceptual virtual work. And I think that's the biggest shift, that the music is not the starting point anymore, but the music is adding to the overall experience.
Mm. And like you gave an example of Ferdi, how other kinds of pieces that you play that where you make from scratch with the composer in VR?
Now, so we didn't perform it yet, but we
Mhm.
are working with some composers now. Empty Mind, for example, was a piece that existed as a concert piece and was then transported into VR. The Fernia's in a different way. Most of them are gonna be placed in a virtual world and will trigger a live set. And then with Marcelo Lascano, we are now developing some sort of a rock opera based on works of Ensor, but specifically for a VR experience. So there, the music will be written for the VR experience.
And are composers creating some of the VR spaces, or are you working in collaboration with?
Yeah, we are working with NICT profiles and those really, really invested in creative coding, but it's always in a teamwork. So we always organize different workshops where we bring people together because it's too much to do everything yourself, and mostly of the time the teams are just too large as well. So we divide it into categories, and then there's specific workshops, and it always starts with brainstorm sessions for a concept. Then we go to the from the concept to the visuals, and then it is the development, and then you really start one-on-one with the different parameters, but everyone is always connected to the whole creation process.
Hmm, that's great. It's so organized.
It sounds organized, it's never the case in
Now,
practice.
is it just a bit, yeah, kind of playground exploration, a bit
Yeah,
messy?
yeah, a bit, yeah. And what I like, we also like to work with people from the non-artistic sector, but from the creative sector. So, for example, we work a lot with a 3D motion design company, and then they like working with us because we always have ideas that are too big for the budget. But then in some reason we make it happen then. But it's very nice to brainstorm with people from all those different backgrounds and then come to this work together. I find it, yeah, very enriching to hear other ideas. And also the ICTers in our team are not those people that say, no, that's not possible. So they're
Right.
always like really engaged, like, huh, how are we gonna do that? Let's experiment. So in 2 weeks, yeah, in 2 weeks we have a residency week, and that's gonna be exciting. And we're gonna test on a private 5G network of a tech campus here in Belgium to really see if we bring a lot of people live in VR for a live performance. What is the latency? What are the problems? Do people feel connected? Do I need to be in the same room as the audience or not? What about sound? So a lot of questions, no answers, but that's always pretty exciting.
Great. So it's going to connect performers and audiences all in VR.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a type of VR space, or because I remember in your presentation in Ghent you talked about this virtuality thing, but I forget exactly what it was about.
Yeah, the piece that I presented was Empty Mind, and that is the one that we're now gonna bring
Mm.
into VR. And those are 6 Unity environments, custom developed for the piece. And then we will put them on, I don't know how many goggles we will bring with us, 20 or something. And then people all over campus can enter as an avatar. So it will be a multiplayer room,
Mm.
and then interact with the environment and interact with each other and interact with me. In what form or shape we have different options that we need to test. Will it be full avatar, or is it just like light dots that are moving around? Will they see their own traces or not? So these are things that we need to experiment with. But everyone will meet each other in VR, but it's not that it's on one of the platforms, like Decentraland or something, where a lot of people then come together. It's gonna be more curated like that, in order for the program not to crash.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
important. So, how do you find this kind of work, or this particular project you're talking about, changes the idea of what a music performance is?
It's a lot more, again, about this embodiment. Your whole body is shaping the performance, actually way more than only the sound. It's not only with multiphonics that you have to reach there or have to reach here, but it also the investment that you give. If a movement is small, only the fingers, you don't see that translated to an avatar. So every movement is more conscious, but also exaggerated. And time is a completely different thing in VR. Pieces tend to become longer because I, as a performer, take way more time because I also get too much stimuli. It's the connection of the audio with the visuals, and it's a lot, and you need time to absorb that. An audience as well. So in improvisation parts, taking pauses and taking time and really stretching your musical sentences doesn't feel awkward at all. It only makes sense because there's so much information that comes on top of that as well. So in pieces that I already played normal, and then with these visuals, it's especially time and tempo and awareness of your placement that really changes.
So it kind of really deepens your perception of kind of
Yeah, I
musical
mean, I don't
things
want
you
to
were
say
doing.
it slows it down, but it makes you more conscious about every aspect, actually. Even in hybrid formats, when you're on stage and people see you still, but the visuals are behind you. Once you see the visuals yourself, actually moving in your piece, also musically moving in your piece, becomes different, and you take a step back, like you also need to observe yourself in some way.
Mm. Yeah, and this is actually leads to my question about how does this change your knowledge, I guess, as a musician, deepens your knowledge and perception in what you are doing. And I guess you just answered it. It just changes with the embodiment and
Yeah, the embodiment, and I think the know-how of your own playing, your idiosyncratic playing, and your instrument is really searching and researching even more. Again, in contemporary music, it is like that anyways, that if it's now multiphonics or new techniques, or composers are telling you, I want this effect, and you think like, how the hell am I gonna do that? And then you search and you search and you search,
mm,
and you get this extra knowledge of how this tube actually works. And now by adding the technology, you only have your body and your instrument and, yeah, your capacities, limited or not limited. You only have what you have to actually steer and drive this whole project. The technology on itself is not doing anything unless you give input to it. So it's again researching more. How can I broaden effects? How can I make things more visually clear? And then it's not with technical skills you learned at the conservatoire, like how fast can you play a certain scale, but it is really like looking for edges and the limits and the limitations of your instrument and you as a performer. So in classical music, I always say like this is your capacity. And then by investing in contemporary music, you push the boundaries and the limits. Now adding actually all these elements to have a virtual experience is pushing these limits even more. You really, really have to search for new boundaries in your own playing.
So you actually, constantly challenging yourself and
Yeah.
getting back a lot of knowledge about those boundaries. And
Yeah, exactly. Although it sounds the opposite when you improvise with AI, for example, like, oh, you're not thinking yourself anymore, but that's not the case at all. It really is, it gives you results that you don't, as a habit, don't go to. In improvisation, we all have this, our top 10 favorite motives or techniques or things to go to. And by adding technology, by adding AI, by being in a mocap suit, that's not always the best solution anymore. So it's really this challenge of not being content with the style that you have that I find exciting as a challenge.
That's so interesting what you were talking about, the AI project. Could you talk a little bit more about it? And because it was
Yeah,
interesting.
so Figment is a software then customly developed for artists, for artist students, in disciplines that have to do with time. So there has to be a movement. There has to be, for example, when you're writing, or when you're dancing, or sculpting, or drawing, or playing music. Um, and what we're experimenting now is with multiphonics. So it's filming different categories of multiphonics. So I made a list, and we're filming them with motion capture. So motion capture suit, because certain multiphonics will force you to have another position, posture with your body than other multiphonics. So everything is combined. And then we train the model, and it's short training, so it's not 160,000 hours of stable diffusion, but it's like 2 days training of 2 days, and then other multiphonics, other combinations of fingerings are coming out, and the question is how to communicate that with the performer. And we are experimenting with haptics. So we're gonna place sensors also in these same gloves, and with vibrations, they should tell me what fingers to move. But there is also a whole range of parameters, like one, are you following it or not? Two, can you follow it, or is your brain too slow to actually catch up on that? Can we work with different dynamics in vibrations, meaning like this finger is imperative and this one needs to be a half key, or you have to trill with it? How would you communicate that as output? So these are, different things that we're experimenting with in the hope to come to a short soundscape performance where the whole sequence of multiphonics is composed by AI.
And so does AI also tell you how to have like your body, like you were mentioning, to produce
That is
those
that's then another step. Can we also do that by placing vibration on different parts of your body? That, for example, if the AI is telling you to move your left elbow and to hold it upwards, it will have an effect on the position of your flute. So is then it even possible to execute the fingerings that come out with that embouchure or not?
But also there's the diaphragm involved.
And the diaphragm, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Has to be inside. No, that's too much.
And then how do you communicate that to an audience? So we also have to research how to visualize that it also becomes an immersive experience for the audience as well.
Wow, it sounds really interesting. And so it's Figment, you said? How do you spell that?
Figment, Figment.
Figment. Oh, Figment.
Figment, yeah.
Sorry.
It's with the accent that it becomes Figment.
Great. Amazing. And so anything else you'd like to say about how you find your new, well, your way of working in the VR extended virtual reality is kind of making you think something, like making you rethink your musical sorry, identity, or how it's basically, how do you like it?
Yeah, I think the biggest attraction is that you not forget everything that happens in the physical world, but you're not bound to physical laws anymore. So I don't like the concept of digital twins, where reality is being copied into the virtual. You also see that with performances, for example, that the questions arising during the lockdowns was how to capture literally what is happening on a physical stage and send that to people at home. Didn't work. Of course it didn't work, because you cannot recreate the same experience and environment of a physical experience into a virtual experience. So what I find challenging and exciting is to research new experiences, a new format, hybrid formats of art experience that actually have nothing to do with the physical boundaries or the physical tradition that we are used to. So for example, it can be that your audience is floating through a scene while you are a performer. Is it still necessary that they see you as a performer? So what becomes your role as a performer? And then also the different hardware and also software that is being developed challenge you as a performer, I find, to not place yourself at the center of the artistic creation. You are only the motor of everything else that is happening, and you're the energy source. But it's not you in the center. You are actually giving this energy towards different components that then come together and create this artwork. And what I really, really like is this agency for an audience. So it's much more the principles from games, where people decide their trajectory on how they want to perceive the game. And I think this is a future that we have to invest in art experience as well, to put your audience in the driver's seat of the experience, so that they have an agency, they have an ownership, maybe even a co-creationship in the performance, in the artwork that is happening. And I think you can reach another audience by that, which is less exclusive and elitist, and that is attracting younger generations. And I'm not saying we have to forget all the rest, but there should be more, there should be a place and a space for this, and also support. And with support, I don't only mean funding, but also in higher art education. It's those people that will need to find ways to have a job and to be able to execute their passion. And how are you going to do that with this education in a world that has changed so much? Yeah, but I think it's not because of technology. It's just a more open education system is just so necessary to also for, you know, neurodiverse people. I have a student now, a PhD researcher who is gonna finish, and she has DID, so the multiple identity disorder. It's unbelievable the challenges that she has in getting this PhD. It's unbelievable what she has done for her artistic research, her artistic work, the output that comes out, the door that she is opening for for another group of people to really enter also PhD programs. It's unbelievable. Yet the administration, the formal parts are totally, totally not accessible. So I think just the conservativeness and the closeness of our education is an obstacle not only for these new e-arts or digital arts or virtual arts, but for a lot of art forms to come.
Yeah, that's a really great thought. Actually, this project of which these series of interviews are a part of is about digital musicianship and how we can change it in education systems. So we're doing like a tour right now in the US in January, where we're looking, we're going to a lot of US and Canadian universities and engaging with like undergrad students and then asking them like what do they need from their education to be able to, you know, interpret things like digital scores and things like that. So yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, so we'll let you know.
And exciting, yeah.
Yeah.